Alright, so this conversation is going to be a little different. It's going to be the first time I do this. It is just going to be audio in like a minute. So I'm in Saskatoon, and yesterday, Randy and I did our Art Ballad Podcast with Jordan, who we've interviewed before, and if you're watching this, then you might be acquainted with who Jordan is. We were in a band together, and a good friend of mine. And so we did the podcast together. We don't record a visual element to the podcast. Now, we just did the Art Ballad Podcast that we did yesterday was just called the Shoot the Shit, where we just kind of have like a topic or two that we kind of go in with, and then wherever the conversation goes, it just goes there. And I mean, it's still related to art. So we started with why is art important? Then we ended up in the back half talking about originality and if there is such a thing and that whole thing. So I really enjoyed the whole conversation that we had. But I was thinking, well, first of all, I don't really have time. Like, I don't want to make or force time to get a conversation in while I'm here. I wanted to have a conversation on Sunday before we left. Like, we left on Monday, and that just didn't happen. It didn't happen. I wasn't able to get a conversation off on Sunday. And there's like, well, yeah, I can just escape to the vehicle here for a half hour or whatever and do that. I could. However, I really enjoyed this originality conversation that happened in last night's podcast too. So I was like, I'm just going to take the excerpt from that and just use it for my personal, channel and podcast. So yeah, and use it as a conversation, because I've had conversations with people before. This was just unplanned, but because that's where it went, and we had like this conversation that really discussed this concept of originality, it definitely fits with something that I would have talked about anyway. And so that's what I'm going to drop in here is the audio for that, if you're watching this video. So this is also another reminder that there is a podcast for these conversations that I have. The podcast is called Artist Personal Journalist, so you can look that up. It's on all the same platforms that Art Ballad is on, which is a lot. I mean, it's Podcast Addict, Spotify, Google Music, iTunes podcast stuff, Apple Podcasts. Like, there's a bunch. So, you should check that out, because all the audio, like, based videos, I guess. If it's just me talking, if it's a review, if it's a story time, if it is a conversation, all of them that I've ever done since day one that I've made videos of are also episodes of the podcast for Artist Personal Journalist. There's a lot. I did that at like a special request because people were like, a couple people were like, it'd be easier, like I like listening to them, but I mean, I can't just like have YouTube open for like an hour sometimes while you just talk at me. And I was like, hey, podcast it is. I put it all into I just made them MP3 files and then uploaded them as podcast episodes and made a whole thing. Artist Personal Journalist. You can go there to listen to, again, any conversation that I have. Yeah, so that's what's happening now. This video, for the first time ever, will just like stop and have like a still frame of something, and then it'll continue on as just audio. But I really enjoyed the conversation, so I hope you check it out. But I'm curious, because I'm always curious about this, defining art. You said that I need to... I'm going to explain your video you're talking about real quick. So... As you do, I'm going to get another side. I'm sure people know the name Slipknot. There's 9 members. There are 3 percussionists. One is like a traditional drummer, and there's these 2. Well, I guess there's 1 drummer and 2 percussionists, and one of their main instruments as percussionists is a keg, like a steel keg, that they would hit with baseball bats. So this video was just like, some of their songs do not have very many parts for them to play. It's like they're not hitting a keg, like 4/4 or something. Like, it's just like one accent to a very minuscule part of a song. And so Jordan made this video where it'd be like, let's just see this one member hitting the keg, like just waiting, and like waiting to like for their part, and they're just like climbing around, and it was just really humorous and really funny.
It was good.
With this cultural touchstone as well. And like to me, I don't know, like I found it really humorous, and I like pushed it out there and stuff too, because I don't know, it was, like you said, you looked to see if anyone else had made it, and no one else had. Yeah. The question I want to get to is, you said it was art.
Yeah.
How? But I want you to unpack that more, because you were trying to make this distinction and compare us to like me thinking like my mountain bike videos are just like whatever, it's filling a need, it's whatever. Yeah. Yours is, to me, it's different than the mountain bike videos, but I understand your comparison.
Well,
why is it still art versus the other things you were talking about that you do, that you said like little piece of plastic or whatever, like that didn't get as many views and probably never will.
Yeah. Well, I mean, besides already having that connection to something that is so much more ubiquitous than anything I have had a chance to create, like, you know, a lot more people are going to just know what Slipknot is. But I don't know how you expect me to answer after that bullshit that I just witnessed. But okay, I think it's art because there was this tongue-in-cheek approach, and there was, I guess, the editing decisions that I made that aren't necessarily unheard of, but it was the decision to, I guess, just tackle this idea that no one, they're all, and now what makes me feel like a fraud by saying it's art is looking at covers online. There are plenty of covers. There's guitar covers, there's drum covers, there's vocal covers, there's covers of almost any song you can imagine. There was no keg cover of Duality by Slipknot.
Yeah.
And I was like, that feels, to me it felt obvious, because I was like, well, it's an instrument. You know, there's a guitar cover of Duality, there's a vocal cover of Duality, there's no keg cover. Even though Clown hitting the keg is so iconic.
Yeah.
In the Slipknot
that's funny that it's
culture.
About the song Duality too, because there's a dual purpose, and one is you're like, oh yeah, there's like, it's tongue-in-cheek and funny, but also it's legit, this is a legit instrument.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, and it was covered not necessarily faithfully, because there was a comment on there of all the fine comments that pumped me up saying this is clever, this is this and that. Someone actually was like, you know, you should really hit it in the center, like we just, you know, my band, like we studied that, you know, did you use aluminum bats? Because Clown uses aluminum, and I was like, man, I thought it was funny, and I let Dan do whatever he wanted. I just said hit the keg when Clown hits the keg. Yeah. He had earbuds in, he listened to the song, he hit it when he was supposed to hit it. So it was covered semi-faithfully. Yeah. But it was still covered in that he hit the keg when he was supposed to.
Yeah.
Which is all of...
It's like playing a note, but you didn't play it as well as you could have, but you still... It's like a...
Yeah. Because to me, that wasn't really... That wasn't important. That was... As long as he hit it. It didn't matter the frequency. It didn't matter the timbre of the tone. As long as he hit it. So that was fine by me. So what I feel was art with that was, I guess, the editing decisions and the actual decision to do it in the first place, because I think it's funny to me, and that's then artistic to me. So, because it's a joke in itself to do that.
Yeah.
What did not feel like art to me was that it existed, and I just decided to do it because it seemed obvious. And it's filling a need, and it almost has to do, and this is definitely a me thing, because like when I contacted you with that sort of existential crisis about the guy who hunts kids for sport, when I was thinking that, it was like, well, that's been done, it's a trope, but you reassured me.
The most dangerous game.
Yes, the most dangerous game in every single approach to man hunting man for sport. Like, I knew it was a trope, but I guess I just didn't really truly appreciate the the avenues that this idea has already taken, and I was like, well, this idea isn't special. This doesn't matter, and I was really like kind of disappointed because I was really excited about it, and I thought, well, I'm a fraud. So, but you did reassure me in saying that sometimes the remix is better than the original, and you're allowed to do that, I guess, and that was a revelation for me. I don't know if that might seem obvious to you or surprising to you, but that it wasn't obvious to me. But I guess when I think of something like, if it doesn't come from deep down inside of me and has never been done before, then it's not as legitimate as it is if it were like if I reach down and I do something that was completely inspired by me and me alone versus something that has that outside thing, like it's been done and I stood on the shoulders, that feels less like art than the thing that I pulled from myself. And I guess I often forget to appreciate art when it comes to taking something that exists and putting your own spin on it.
Yeah.
Now I might be circling something here but not actually landing on it. I don't know. But
I think you're making complete sense. I don't know. I have lots to say about it, and I'll probably forget half of it.
Well,
why?
Or it'll just go off the rails, which is fine. I just,
baby boy.
I don't know where to start, because like remix culture to me is a thing. Just like art, it can work and it cannot work. Sure. It could be art and it cannot be art. So
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean.
Well, you're right. I guess I just didn't think about it not working, which is true. But I just.
Oh yeah, but there's tons of covers or remixes. I'm like, you barely did anything.
Yeah.
Like to. Oh.
So sorry, just to slip in real quick. Like on my YouTube channel, like I've done covers, but just to see what that's like. Yeah. And to actually do it. Yeah. I'm not doing it for... that might be a better example of your biking videos, because like I covered a Lamb of God song.
You're doing like a playthrough.
But I just did a playthrough, exactly. Yeah. I just played it on guitar. That's not artistic at all.
Yeah, and then
I just played along to it to show that I could play it.
I just realized you're bringing up something that was one of my like contentions in the band.
Oh?
Well, it was like, let's cover this song. I'm like, we're not covering it, we're playing it. Like when we covered Lamb of God songs, we didn't change anything.
Yeah.
It was just the fact that you're not so and so or Mark playing it, and I'm not Randy.
Sure. Like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, no,
that was just one of my things. Like, well, if we're gonna cover something that's really covered, but it just seemed like
let's make it our own. Yeah, yes. Yeah. Well, then there's something to that too. It's making it your own. Of like, and this might send you off the rails even more. But like, I was arguing with my brother Nick. Sorry to name drop you, Nick. If you ever listen to it, I doubt you will. Not out of lack of love, but come on, what are the chances? I was arguing because Weezer did a whole album of covers.
Yep.
And I listened to two of them, but I was like this might as well just be the band's. Like they covered Africa by Toto.
Yeah.
Who the hell's a Weezer?
What?
Weezer, Buddy Holly and what's the one about? Oh yeah, Beverly Hills.
They had a
Beverly Hills. Stop. Is this real life?
Well, she's really bad with names. If she heard the song Buddy Holly, she might.
Well, and I didn't sing it at all just now. I just sort of.
I like how he's saving his
put notes over words.
Yeah. Didn't try.
We'll play it for you later. Okay, they did Toto, and I was like, they basically sound like 90% of the song that already exists. They put like they versus, the very famous example of Marilyn Manson doing of doing Sweet Dreams. Like that's a cover.
Yeah,
because that's him taking a thing that exists and putting it through his demented filter and putting it out there and making this beautiful reinterpretation.
Love that man.
Me too. But and this is gonna bring up some other like not semantic, but like you get really nitpicky. I raised my fist at you because I thought you were gonna say Johnny Cash covering Hurt by Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah, like excuse me.
Okay. So the reason
I didn't know that was a thing.
Do you mean the other way around, in that people assume that it's Nine Inch Nails that covered Johnny?
No,
that's not what I was gonna bring up.
I just thought it was a.
Sorry, what?
No, we don't say sorry. We say excuse me.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Am Am I Lil?
Anyways.
You're right. Excuse me. Pardon me.
I didn't even know that was a cover. I just thought...
Yeah, well, that's because, unfortunately, Johnny Cash, in some circles, is just more famous of a name.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I was going to clarify that.
Shut up, Randy.
But that's not really why I brought it up. I brought it up because, like, Jordan just said this thing about, like, Manson filtering the Eurythmics through his just natural, demented mind or whatever it was you said that I agree with.
Him.
And it was very, very different.
Yeah.
And thing is, like, I already loved the original Sweet Dreams, and the thing is, like, this, I listened to the Manson one more, but it has a different flavor.
Yeah.
It took it to another level. Yeah. It's still...
But it's still kind of accessible, and I'm sorry to interrupt again, because there's, I think, an example, like, so A Perfect Circle covered a bunch of songs. They did Imagine. Yeah. But it's not even the same song anymore. Yeah. That's way in the other direction. And I like, that's fine, like, their version is fine, but I wouldn't even say it's a good cover, because it's just a song that was, I would almost think, just inspired by that song.
I just really liked the song by Johnny Cash. Oh. Until I keep going back to this because I was mind blown.
So a lot of people think that Johnny Cash...
there's a cover and then there's just...
But like, I really enjoyed Johnny Cash's version.
Okay, so this is what I was going to get to.
Sorry to interrupt.
Let me stop talking.
Well, no, I want you to chime in, but I want to make this point of like... Right. Or this argument or whatever it is, because yes... Some people play a cover and it's just what I would call a playthrough. It's like, just because my voice isn't the same as Randy's, like Randy Bly from Lamb of God, not Randy sitting here, Randy. I'm like, it's different because it's my voice. Right. But it's not intentionally different. It's just different because I have a different voice. You're using a different guitar tone or a different guitar. Or like, you're not playing as proficiently as that, or can't hit the same notes or whatever. And then
it's not us putting an intentional stank on it.
No. Mm-hmm. And then, but with Manson, like you said, there's a very intentional, I want to take it to this direction, or with The Perfect Circle, and like their covers on that album.
Which I don't know.
Emotive.
Yeah, Emotive.
But then, with the Johnny Cash thing, so besides my huge contention with the fact that so many people think Nine Inch Nails covered him, and it's completely the other way around. By the way, I learned, when I told you that there's this podcast, what is it, Broken Record, by Ross, I almost said Ross Robinson, and that's a disservice. Rick Rubin.
Really?
Yeah,
there's a podcast?
Yeah, I told you about it. You were the only one who even knew who Rick Rubin was.
But I guess I was more attracted to the just the name and not like the context.
Yeah, he does it with Malcolm Gladwell. But anyway,
okay, that's cool.
Anyway, Rick Rubin has
also
this podcast.
I'm a moron, so everyone knows that.
I think it's called Broken Record. I can't remember, but you can find it. Anyway, but I just learned too, like he was the one who did that album with Johnny. I didn't know that. Oh. But before that, obviously I knew, like Hurt came out on the Downward Spiral, which was like, 92 or 94, and Johnny Cash came up like 20 years later or whatever, that he was going to,
wasn't he
it'd be about that, probably.
Yes, he was pretty much
now that I like listen to the one and then the other,
excuse me,
like he's probably in Palette of Care.
Yeah, that was the last thing he did before he died.
Yeah.
And the thing was, I was like, yeah, it sounds like it. That's what I used to say.
It's true, though.
Yeah, but
now that I like go back and listen to what it's coming from,
I have a different appreciation for it now that I've heard Rick talk about it. However, the thing was, to me, he didn't do anything different other than he did it acoustically, so you change the instrument. So it's like changing the medium. Sure.
And he filtered it through his voice, which is this very classic.
Yeah, and he filtered it through his voice. I guess that's enough to make it a very I'm like, is that to me it's on the border of like a purposeful cover like Manson,
right,
versus like this is just a playthrough. Right, However, when you talk about Weezer covering these songs or whatever, it's like, well, it's not the same voice, but it's just a middle-aged man's voice versus like, okay, we've got a young, angry, like there's still emotional pain in Trent Reznor's voice versus a man in his almost death in like his 80s, like who's lived this life.
Yeah.
And the context, like I said, I have more appreciation for it now. I still don't like listening to it because I think it sounds like trash. But like, I don't like listening to it, but I have more appreciation for the concept because where he was in his life alone, the concept. Yeah, like his personal context, it being filtered through his personal context, gave it some more meaning. But it's also a song with a lot of meaning already. It's not Africa, by Toto.
Yeah,
so I don't know. The other thing I wanted to say about remix culture, though, and to get back to this other thing you were talking about like if seems like for you, art being valued at a certain level also has to do with originality.
And
how you're like...
Yeah, that you summed it up.
Well, if you pulled it out of the ether of yourself, you said, then it all of a sudden has more value, whether if you're standing on the shoulder of giants.
Sure.
And my thing, I was thinking of one example, but then also just jumping off that, there's like the Grey album is what it's called. So DJ Danger Mouse, this DJ, he decided he was going to take the White Album by the Beatles, and he was going to take the Black Album by Jay-Z.
Oh.
And he was going to use all the beats from the White Album and make... And take all the vocals from the Black Album, from Jay-Z's Black Album, and he made new songs, but he took the literal sound from...
Yeah, that was already been created and
on the White Album.
It,
and he remixed the whole thing into a brand new album. It has the same lyrics as this one, has the same instruments, but it's not the song. Like, it's a new song. It's not like he just took one track and overlaid the vocals on top.
Well, and it's a very clever idea.
Yeah.
And the product is very clever. Gray, white, and black. Yeah,
but it's
great.
also...
I love
it
that.
is new. Like, and that's the thing, he is standing on the shoulder of giants you could even say, on two giants.
Yeah.
But he's making something that is so original that I just believe, like, that is still art. Like, he had this vision, he had this thing, and to me, the skill or the work you put into something doesn't make it art. To me, it is the concept.
That's fair.
But I think you have to acknowledge, too, like, that I really believe in originality. I really believe that we can come up with original things. However, I want to draw it back to, like, when are we not standing on the shoulder of giants? Because my big thing is that I consume a lot of art in all these different... Whether it's watching Hannibal, whether it's reading Nietzsche, or whether it's listening to A Perfect Circle, or Nine Inch Nails. Because some of my literal paintings, all I do is change the medium. I'm listening to a song.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel a way, and so I express it visually.
Yes.
Well, to me, my thought, like, is my feeling an original feeling? Because it's coming from the song. Everything comes from my experience, and the song gave me an experience.
Yeah.
And all I'm doing is filtering it through me. The difference is, though, I think, when it comes to your example of, like, the most dangerous game trope, that's been written, and you're just writing it again. And I don't know if that's what makes the difference, because what if you painted the most dangerous game, or what if you made no, there's been films too. Like, I don't know.
That's true. That's a good point. I guess it's the mode of expression.
But, well, I'm not making an argument that yours is less. I'm saying I wonder if that's what it is for you, because I think, like I told you, like, you're taking something, but how much originality is there? Like, there's an experience, there's a trope, there's a thing that you were building off of, and I think that it's perfectly valid and artistic to build off of that idea and take it in your own direction, because it is being filtered through you. With intention.
You're right.
That's
you're right.
Filtered through you with intention.
Yes. You're right. I don't know if I have any more to add to that. That's a good point. I guess, but and again, it is my own thing. Like, it is me thinking that I have to come up with my own versions of things and my own interpretation. Like, not even interpretations, because I feel like it has to come from me, and it can't exist anywhere else in order for it to be original. And I guess that's not entirely true. That's just my own insecurity. Because, like, I'll listen to... And this is a weird example, but... well, even... Just own it, Randy. This might seem like a really random example, but Hank... how do you say his last name? Azaria? He does a lot of the voices on The Simpsons.
Oh, I don't know his name.
Okay, fairly... Actually, speaking of Godzilla, he was in that.
Oh.
Like the 1998 one.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, doesn't matter. He's a prolific voice actor on The Simpsons. He does a bunch of the characters. He does Moe, he does Comic Book Guy, he does... I think he does Snake. Well, a lot of them.
Okay.
And I watched this interview of him where he talked about where he got the inspiration for these voices, and it's kind of... it reminds me of Mike Judge, who does the voices on King of the Hill and Beavis and Butthead. And,
Because we know how you feel about them.
Well, I don't, but I just got it now. They talked about how these people from real life inspired them. And when I hear that, I go, oh, well, you didn't really come up with it on your own. You just borrowed it from real life. And that's like kind of, and don't get me wrong, I've come around on that. But at the time, like when I initially heard that, and when I was convinced that the only good idea is the one that you thought of completely on your own and from deep inside yourself, and inspiration was a crutch, not entirely, but like if you borrow too much from real life, then it's not your own thing, which was where my mind was at, and I've since come around on that. I see the judgment on that side of the table.
I was going to say, I'm waiting for, Randy's shaking her head.
I'm just enjoying this.
You're shaking your head no.
No, I just feel like everyone is living on borrowed time. Everyone is living on everyone else's ideas. I don't think one person can come up with one thing and it's their thing.
Well, and you're right, and I think you're right because
wait. Because you're agreeing to something, and I want to know what you're agreeing to.
I'm agreeing to the idea that my own idea of things was like, I was thinking lesser of these guys, even just for a second, because they borrowed inspiration from real people. They didn't come up with it themselves.
But they did.
But they did.
Yeah,
you're right.
But they didn't. That's the thing.
So if comic book guy, if you're doing the voice for comic book guy, and it wasn't your own idea of what comic book guy is or could be, it's this roommate that you had in college.
That's the thing. Taking you, for example, Jordan, what he gets from you, blah, 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 and what I get from completely different. What he gets is original, what I get is original, but it's still from this. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Well, I think I get what you're saying. Oh man, there's
We're all living on.
There's a massive
you're not
freeway
original,
of ideas
you're not
going
original,
on.
I'm not original, that person's not original. It's all coming from something.
Well, and
always.
that's it took me an embarrassing amount of time for me to
tell
come
me
to
how
that.
you're original.
Then what are you saying?
Okay,
I will get there.
I'll just cap off my thing by saying I understand now that it's okay to borrow from real life and filter it through yourself, because that can still be original, and that can still be art, that can still be creative. I'm not saying you should not. I'm not saying you should not and cannot reach inside yourself and find something that has not been used or rarely been used. You're right,
Period.
but I guess
this is the argument I want to hear.
There's no way it doesn't come from somewhere.
See, that's the... Well, what is somewhere? Because if it's your own...
It can be anything. When you dream at night, it can be someone you pass on the street that you're dreaming of.
Yeah,
it's coming from anywhere.
Okay.
It's not...
Slow your roll.
No.
Everything comes from somewhere, but
It does, though. You're not thinking... It doesn't just come from... It's like, no. Somebody's thought of it. Somebody's done it. You've seen an idea of it, or a part of it, or a version of it.
But how much? But I guess how much? Like, if it's 1% versus 90%, I feel like I understand if you're only borrowing 1% from something and you stretch it into this new thing versus 90% where all you got to do is that.
I still feel like no matter how much you're using from it, it can be original. You guys, I'm not the person to argue.
Yes, you are.
I'm not, though, because I'm so much very, not you.
No, but that's perfect. That's the whole reason you are the one to argue.
It comes
from somewhere, but that somewhere matters, and how much...
It doesn't.
Well, Jordan was trying to say, how much are you borrowing? But I think the thing is, you can be borrowing things unconsciously, which doesn't mean it doesn't make it any better or worse.
Right.
Because you subconsciously, you just said, your dreams, you pass someone on the street and you see they're in your dream or whatever.
Yeah.
I think dreams are fairly nonsensical a lot of the times. They don't mean necessarily anything. However, there's also a reason why, I just saw that person on Facebook, I haven't seen them in years, and that's why I dreamt about them, even though I've never dreamt about them before. But what you're borrowing, consciously or subconsciously, and how much and whatever, to me the thing about you're taking it from somewhere, but the thing I was thinking of is there are millions of people who have been abused. Let's say it's a specific thing, you're being physically abused by a parent, okay? But if I express my personal experience with my physical abuse from a parent, that doesn't mean that I'm borrowing from someone else's experience.
Well, no trauma is the same.
Exactly.
Right.
But that's the thing, I'm not borrowing it at all. So what is the argument? I'm taking what? I'm taking it from my experience. And my experience is filtered through me.
Right.
And no one else has had all of my experiences.
Right.
All my experiences filtered through my nature, my nurture. What makes me me is completely unique.
I feel like you just agreed with me and Jordan 100%.
Yeah, I'm not...
Okay.
I don't think he was disagreeing.
No,
I'm
I'm so confused
I'm not necessarily disagreeing, but
Right.
I'm just wondering, because you said, like, it comes from somewhere. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, it comes from somewhere, but how does that make it not original? Because there's some things you're saying where I'm like, yes, okay.
No, I'm not saying it's not original.
But what do you mean by it
confused
comes
now,
from
too.
somewhere?
I feel like no matter...
So I'm going to give you another example.
Okay.
Abstract painting.
And I'm really sorry I have
Right.
to take a leak. But I'll be right back. But I almost want to leave the door open to listen, but then
I
in that you
feel...
might be able to hear it. So I'm going to close the door, but I'm going to listen real hard.
I feel like, okay, an abstract.
Right.
Remember, I've said on this podcast before, and I don't remember in what episode.
I don't think abstracts are 100% original either.
I know, but just wait.
Shut up, Randy.
It's not just about abstracts, but it's just
Okay.
something I was painting in university a lot.
Right.
And I had a professor, shout out Graham Fowler, who asked everyone in the class, what are you looking at? Who are you looking at?
Right.
And I hated the question because, like, dude, I'm not looking at anybody. This is coming from me. And it was coming from me.
Right.
I wasn't familiar with what abstract work was.
Right.
I started creating abstract work before I knew what non-objective even meant. I had no idea. So that influence wasn't coming from me looking at other abstracts. It wasn't coming from me looking at other artists.
Right.
The experiences were coming, well, yeah, they were my personal
So you...
relationships
Right.
that were being filtered through me
Right.
and my hand.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you
So-
mean when you say it's coming from somewhere?
It has to come from somewhere. Like,
Well, yeah.
abstract, for example. The colors that you choose to use, you're not like, oh, you don't go in there blind. You're thinking of something. The fact that you're thinking of that is because you've seen it. You know what I mean?
So you're saying subconsciously somewhere years and years ago I saw a color combination.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, I'm equating that color combination to this emotion.
Absolutely.
I couldn't disagree with that necessarily.
It has to come from somewhere.
Well, that's like culturally we are taught that dark
Right.
or like
and we've
the
talked
color
about
black
this. Yeah, we've talked
is going
about,
to
yeah.
symbolize dark feelings in the
Right.
aspect of not negative, I should say.
It's,
So those associations that
yeah,
you're saying
and
are,
I feel like oh man, I don't know how to word it without like it's like when I'm doing an abstract and stuff, how busy they are. You know what I mean? And there's way too many colors and it's coming from somewhere. It's coming from a thought that I'm having and I'm putting these colors that I can see because of something that happened or I've seen or I've dealt with and that's what's being splatted out.
Yeah, so then what if I made the association so Randy was just talking about how like everything comes from somewhere, so even like the colors I might use, because my example was like abstract pieces when
I don't think anyone under the sun's original. 100%.
Well, I think either
I don't
you
think
are,
anyone under the sun is 100% original.
I think, well, and I've heard that being said, but I also feel like in my own stupid head, hold a higher regard for people who seem to take something very small and stretching it into
make
something
it their
that is
own
their
thing.
own, versus something that's already fairly stretched and then just taking it that much further.
Right. Okay.
Is
So
that-
I agree with that. 100%. 150%.
Oh, that's a lot
But
of percent.
I was gonna say that I was saying that abstracts, I was creating them and I wasn't looking at anyone, like I wasn't looking at a specific artist or whatever, and I was doing abstracts before I knew what an abstract really was. But then Randy was saying, yeah, but your color choices are like nurtured into you somewhat because you associate negative feelings with like black or dark colors. And I was like, yes, I can't disagree with that. However, I was also wondering, so if I choose, so that's not original, is what her argument was, because I am drawing from this cultural source that I have been taught. But what if I just chose to 180 that and just say, okay, well, all these dark whatever. If I was going to use black, now I'm using white. If I was going to use purple, now I'm going to use
Okay,
orange.
but it's the feeling and typically a feeling is connected to a person or a situation that somebody else is connected to or has dealt with. So it's not original. It's you taking your version of something opposed to someone else's version of something.
But no one else.
Something else.
I didn't have to be aware of anyone else's feeling in order for me to feel
that's
that way.
fine. But somebody else was feeling it. Somebody else has felt it, been there, seen that person, dealt with that feeling situation.
They've dealt with the
area.
situation, but they're still. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. I'm not saying you're not original.
I am. You're
I'm just saying no one is 100% original. It's no one's. Like, it's super weird, but nobody's feelings are just their own and nobody else's.
See, but
Nobody's
I disagree.
situation is just their own and nobody else's.
That's where I disagree.
No, because your situation is
You're not allowed to disagree, you idiot.
No, that's so dumb.
You can relate to people. This goes back to like the abuse analogy.
Okay.
Millions of people have had the same experience, but they're not the same.
Okay, so say somebody was abused by somebody, and this somebody was related to both the person who was being abused and somebody else they didn't abuse. This person's allowed to have feelings about that person, and this person's allowed to have feelings about that person, and they're completely different, but they're not original because they're based on the same thing. The feelings they have are original. The situation that got them to those feelings are not original. Because they're dealing with it with somebody else. Somebody else has them.
I
Disagree.
don't get it. I'm confused now because you said like the situation, but the feelings no matter what the situation is different because they come to it differently.
Right.
So
I can see a stop sign, you can see a stop sign. You can see somebody blow a stop sign, I can blink and miss it, and you get a completely...
That's not what I mean. That's not what I'm just saying, like, if somebody...
Here we go.
Well, I'm trying to wrap it up, but...
We're at an hour 10.
Well, that's not why. I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to, like, find a resolution to this, not take off. I thought I already did. I'm trying to say that, like, maybe we're arguing 2 different points. Maybe that's the problem. That, like...
Maybe we see red, different colors.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, but I'm just saying, like, with an experience...
Okay.
The experience is going to be original no matter what, because you have your own... I don't know how to... Let's say...
But I feel like if it's coming from the same thing, it's not 100% original.
But you are 100% original, therefore... Therefore, the way you would interpret that experience is automatically different from the way your twin...
Okay, but where you got the experience is the same as the other person. So you guys are...
The source is the same.
The source is the same.
The interpretation is
right.
different.
That's fine.
I'm confused then. What are
But
you arguing?
why, though?
The source can be the same.
Right.
So, but you're saying the source in itself is
yes.
already rendering it unoriginal because it is a
Right.
source that existed and you borrowed from it.
It's just seeing... Yeah, right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's do you know what I mean? Do you know what he...
I know what you're saying, but I don't understand its significance.
Because it's not original then. I feel like
As
it
in to
has to
say
be
that
from
if it already
step 1
exists,
to
then it's
Okay.
step 10, it has to be original for it to be original.
Okay, so...
I don't...
No, I just want to... I understand what you're saying. I think I finally understand what you're saying.
Thanks, Jordan.
No, the source being...
You just needed a man to talk for.
Wow.
I get it.
The source being original. So
Talk about filters and what you
you're twins,
Just kidding.
right? And then your dad hits you.
Right.
The source is original because he hits you both.
Right. How I see it, how they see it, completely different. But,
Yeah.
But
the
dad
source
hitting you is
the
the
same.
source.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And instead of making up
So
that...
say me not connected to somebody, say me and not a sibling, me and Bob both fail a grade, and we feel different things from it, we get different experiences from it, blah, blah, blah. The source is still the same.
See, but and to me
And
that's
so-
what doesn't make any sense.
Well, but I think what I think, and I could be totally making this worse. I could be helping, probably making it worse. The failing grade thing, you interpret it differently. It's the failing grade that's the source, and if the failing grade didn't exist at all, but you...
If two people get different
that's still-
feelings from something, from the same thing, it's not original anymore. To me.
But it wouldn't have been original at the moment that you experienced it, it would have been original at the moment you experienced it because you are the one experiencing it in that moment.
Right.
So
Right.
even if literally
We're literal.
the figurative father slapped you and your identical twin
I fucking
in the
wish my father would slap me across the bridge right now.
the bridge.
No,
Oh,
not that bridge. Like,
okay. Anyway,
don't have that.
I'm just.
That's a boy thing.
What? We have bridges?
You've never seen that movie? What was that off
Well,
of?
everyone's got a bridge.
No, but they were talking about a
Do we?
boy in this movie.
It's the same thing. I don't remember what it's called
It's
right
not
now.
very often
It's
I
on
just
Netflix.
hear girls talk about, oh yeah, my gooch.
Oh, okay. That's nomenclature we can all agree on.
The ritual.
Bridge.
Lick a bridge.
Okay,
Anyway.
you're right.
Okay, so
I see it as a bridge now. Okay.
I don't know.
Just so you know, he talks about a nut and an anus. I don't have nuts. So.
No, but
Original.
anyway, I think that if you and your identical twin were standing right next to each other, and the figurative father here slapped you both in one gesture, got
It
you
doesn't
both
matter if
across
it's
the
6
face.
times or once.
Okay.
Shut up, Randy.
The point is that the experience is immediately original because both of you are different people and both of you have different experiences up to then.
But is
and
the
both
source
of you,
the same?
The source is the same, but
Okay.
the experience immediately is different.
And I can appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And I think I get that,
I just don't even.
yeah. Oh, and I do get that. Yeah.
I get what you're saying. And that's fine that we differ.
I'm just confused.
Well, but I think
Maybe you shouldn't be like 3 drinks in and...
I think it's just 2. I think that was a 4-pack, and this one's still. Oh no, they're both empty. But
Anyway,
I don't know, man.
I think
just...
so the father hitting you in the first place that can be a real thing. But I think of like taking it one step further and imagining that thing,
Right.
Which is what to me even more original, quote unquote. And I understand how you have to still have a reference point to understand what that's like and experience that. I guess what my thought is that
You're pulling
there's
from
always
something.
there's always a source.
Right.
Whether the source is actually, it depends on how real that source actually is, or if you have such a strongly developed sense of empathy that you can draw from that it feels like it's from yourself and not from real experience,
Right.
and you don't have to say, oh, that came from this thing, that came from that thing, that was inspired from this real thing that I can point to. It came from me and my own ideas of that experience. But then again, as you kind of go full circle with that idea, you can also say, well, how do you have those ideas of abuse? Maybe you have it from secondhand stories, maybe you have it from media. So then I guess it does
Everyone's an artist and nobody's original.
wow. I want to clarify one thing.
Sure.
That I thought you were saying,
Yeah.
and that's so the real originality, or like the next step of originality that you recognize as more valid, as more artistic, is basically asking what if.
Yep.
Is that you take these experiences that are touchstones that other people have had that are, like you said, a reference point.
Yep.
And then you ask, but you basically combine that with a different reference point, whatever it is, and say, well, what if we did this with it?
Sorry.
So there's an infinite amount of possibilities then, right? And
Sure.
that means there's infinite possibilities for some type of originality. Because even though someone else may have thought it, again, they're not thinking of it exactly the same way you are.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't even express it ever. And if they do express it, it's still not going to be the same.
Yeah.
Because they could have even thought, yeah, I want to filter this idea through a literal red lens when I film it, and your red lens is darker.
Yes.
But like that's the next step of originality for you, from what I'm hearing, is what if. Take this reference point and this reference point, let's combine them, and what would happen if we did that? That's what I'm understanding anyway.
Well, and yeah.
I mean, I think to me that's the only logical thing, because you're saying like that the original idea has to come from you.
Yeah. Instead of
But
some outside source, it has to come from within rather than from outside.
But to combine that with what Randy's saying too is that
to interpret your experiences too. Yeah, I guess in my head, the closest you can get to original is you making it up almost completely. But you do have a point that you do maybe need that reference point, however slim or however vague. Like,
I don't know,
because you wouldn't understand what abuse is until someone said it, whether you said it or
don't feel like somebody
experienced
can do that. Make something up completely from
Unless you
0 to...
Even if you try to create your own language,
Right.
you'd be basing that language off of a language you're already familiar with.
Right.
Because I mean, that's what so much of like I think that's what I was getting from something you just said was like.
Of course, you're getting it from him.
Well, the reference point. Well, I mean,
Because
language.
he has a penis.
Language is so important with
This hair.
how we understand anything. That I don't remember what it was you said now that got me to think about just language in itself and how we interpret a word to mean something. Well, you said abuse. Like, there's a reference point for what abuse even is.
Yeah.
There's a definition. There's a cultural, accepted.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, in someone's interpretation of that, like whether you experience it or it is an abstraction, but then you try to use your empathy to fill in the blanks and understand what that is. I feel like if you are writing, maybe this is taking away from it a bit, but like there's this novel that a guy I knew had written. And to me, I shouldn't even say to me, like it was for sure just a thinly veiled biography. That was the whole story, the whole novel was built on real experiences he had. He didn't have to make them up. They were real. He just changed names and places. And to me, that was not fiction. It might as well have been a biography.
Right.
To me. Because I was like, well, okay, I understand this is a story. I understand this is inspiration and you want to tell the story, but these aren't things you made up. These are real things. You just changed the names so that you could tell this thing, and it just sort of almost masquerades as fiction. Versus, and not to toot my own horn, but like the novel that I'm writing, it's completely invented, and there are reference points of real people, real feelings, real places, but none of this ever happened.
Yeah.
And so to me, that is more original. And that's originality.
Yeah.
I cannot, like the writing that this guy did, it was fine, but the story was not original because he drew from himself. Now, if he maybe, and now, like I don't think it's enough to say that it's creative or original to just change names of something that already happened to you.
Yeah, I know what
So
you're saying.
I think that's a really loose version. That would be Weezer covering Toto. That's that version. I like to think of... I think what an accepted version of borrowing from real life and filtering it through yourself is the Marilyn Manson Eurythmics example. That, I think, is appropriate filtering. And then to even take it one step further, it's A Perfect Circle covering When the Levee Breaks, where I've heard When the Levee Breaks, and when I heard that A Perfect Circle song, I wouldn't even know they were covering When the Levee Breaks, because it was so different. It might as well be their own song.
Yeah.
It might as well have been a song that Maynard brought to the group and was like, hey, let's do this.
Yeah.
And they do it. It almost doesn't even count as a cover to me. So I feel like there's this spectrum of originality and what could be considered original and what you're borrowing from and what you're doing. That's, I guess, where I'm at.
Yeah.
And there is...
Oh, so sorry.
Sorry or excuse me, because I hear they're kind of interchangeable. I don't know. But I guess going back perhaps to Randy's most bare-bone thesis is that you cannot possibly invent a new thought or a new feeling. It has to come from something, however big or small.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
I think that's... I'm not getting into this again.
Yeah. No, but
Left
I
for
think
a second.
I know what you're saying completely, because even your original fiction fantasy idea that you brought up is still based off of something like the fact, like, I'm gonna create a story where a dragon does. Well, what's a dragon?
Yeah, what's a dragon? You have to know what a dragon is first. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I mean that's the
You
thing.
have to
There's
know
so
what
many
anger is. You have to know what sadness is. You have to know what dirt is.
Well, yeah, and all your characters can fit into this environment, even if it's an original. You're creating a new universe, which tons of people do.
Mm-hmm.
They're still based off of the reality that
certain
we
realities.
exist in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Of
yeah.
like, even if you twist, that's what I was trying to say before. Of like, well, what if I just say, oh, well, black is associated with negativity. Let's just do white then, or whatever. Then it's like saying, okay, well, on this planet I'm making, there needs to be some kind of atmosphere for them to breathe. Why? I mean, but if you do the opposite of that, or if you say, well, people can breathe in a new way, that's an original idea. Okay, I'm going to make a new way that people breathe, and no one's ever expressed that. But it's based off the fact that you know what breathing is.
Yeah, that you know what breathing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, as long as you know what breathing is, are you a fraud by saying, I know what breathing is, and I'm basing something off of that? Well, no. But my dumb brain said yes for a long time. Not tonight, but just in general.
Mm-hmm.
I've only recently come around on the idea of being like, okay, it's okay to borrow from real life.
Yeah.
I like that.
Just don't steal from real life. Borrow.
Oh,
well, difference.
That's a whole other podcast. That's a whole other podcast.
We don't need to go there, but... Well, heck.
So,
heck.
We're sitting on 1 hour and 27 minutes. It was really nice chatting with both of you.
Yeah. Good day. Or something. I don't...
Good day, good night. Bye.